Before we dive in, remember, facing the dark side of ourselves isn't easy. But if this video resonates with you, consider liking and subscribing. That way, we continue together on this journey of mirrors and truths no one wants to hear, but everyone needs.
You think you can read people, their tone, their eyes, the tiny shifts in their voice. You think you can feel when someone's hiding something, when their words don't match their face, when their smile arrives a second too late. You call it intuition. You call it awareness. But Jung had another word for it: projection. Because what if every time you read someone, you were just reading yourself? What if the lies you sense are the ones you tell quietly inside? What if the coldness you notice in others is just the warmth you stopped allowing yourself to feel? We all believe we're decoding people, but most of us are only decoding our own shadows. That's the secret Jung tried to warn us about. The unconscious doesn't just live inside you. It paints itself onto everyone you meet. And until you see that, you'll keep mistaking your reflection for revelation. So, in this video, we're not going to learn how to read others. We're going to learn how to see the hidden motives that shape every perception you have, and discover why the moment you truly read someone, you're already staring into your own mirror.
We all believe we can see through people. It makes us feel safe, powerful even. To understand someone is to hold the illusion of control. But that illusion is exactly what the unconscious uses to control you. You don't just read people, you invent them. Every face you meet becomes a canvas where your mind paints its unfinished stories. You meet someone distant and instantly think, cold. You meet someone intense and whisper, too much. But you never stop to ask, according to whom? Those judgments feel like truth because they were born from the same emotions you refuse to feel. Your mind projects what it hides. It condemns what it cannot integrate. That's why the people who bother you the most often resemble something you lost or something you're still running from. Jung said, the psyche plays both sides of the mirror. One side hides the wound, the other pretends to diagnose it in everyone else. That's how the illusion begins, not in the eyes of the other, but in the blind spots of your own perception. But here's what makes the illusion even deeper. You don't only invent who others are, you also invent who you are in relation to them. Around every person, a different version of you appears. With some, you become softer. With others, defensive. Sometimes powerful, sometimes invisible. Each interaction is a mirror that shapes the self you perform. And the more people you understand, the more fragmented you become. 1,000 small selves trying to be what every reflection demands. That's why genuine connection feels so rare. We're too busy performing the version of ourselves that matches the story we project onto them. So, when you think you're reading someone, remember they're reading you too through the same filters of fear, memory, and desire. And between those overlapping projections, the truth about both of you gets lost. You call it instinct, but most instincts are rehearsed reactions disguised as wisdom. We think we're decoding subtle cues, tone, posture, distance, when in truth, we're just recognizing patterns we ourselves created. It's comfortable, isn't it, to believe you already know who someone is. It saves you from curiosity, from vulnerability, from seeing how little you actually understand. And that's the trap. The more certain you are about others, the less conscious you are about yourself. Because awareness isn't certainty. It's the courage to not know, to question the stories you project on every face, to notice the small moment when perception quietly turns into invention. You think you're reading someone's intention, but you're really reading your own need to predict, to label, to feel one step ahead of rejection. That's why your accuracy feels addictive. Each assumption gives you a hit of control, a sense that you're safe from the chaos of the unknown. But the unknown is exactly where truth hides. Soon you'll see how that need to understand others is actually your defense against seeing yourself. But before we get there, we need to understand what happens when the mirror starts reflecting back. Because once the illusion cracks, even slightly, what you see in others stops being about them at all.
The moment you realize you've been projecting, something inside you shifts. The world stops being made of strangers and starts feeling like a hall of mirrors. Every expression, every reaction, every silence suddenly looks like a message meant for you. It's unsettling at first, because it means the things that irritate you most are not accidents. They're invitations. Invitations from the unconscious to see the pieces of yourself you've left behind. That's why certain people enter your life with surgical precision. They appear exactly where your awareness ends. The charming one who triggers your jealousy, the confident one who awakens your shame, the distant one who mirrors your fear of closeness. These people are not coincidences. They're the psyche's way of showing you what you refuse to face. The mirror effect isn't mystical. It's psychological gravity. You attract the reflections you're ready or terrified to see. And the reflection doesn't lie. It reveals, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. You think someone hurt you, but maybe they only touched the bruise that was already there. You think someone disappointed you, but maybe they just stopped playing the role you wrote for them. That's the cruel mercy of the mirror. It gives you what you need to see, not what you want to believe. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's when relationships start to change, not because the other person changes, but because your projection collapses. You no longer need them to play your script. You stop trying to fix, save, or decode. You start to witness. It feels disorienting at first, like losing a superpower. But soon you'll notice something quieter: clarity. The same gaze that once judged now begins to understand. The same voice that once accused starts asking questions. You begin to sense that the people around you were never obstacles to your growth. They were your growth. Every argument becomes an X-ray. Every disappointment becomes a mirror test. And slowly, the faces that once triggered you start to look like teachers in disguise. It's not about romanticizing pain. It's about recognizing its precision. Because life keeps repeating the same patterns until you stop seeing enemies and start seeing messages. But here's the paradox. The more you awaken to the mirror, the harder it becomes to hide from it. You'll start seeing your reflection in places you never expected, in kindness, in cruelty, even in silence. And that realization that everything reflects something within you isn't the end of the illusion, it's the beginning of consciousness. Because if the mirror shows you so much, who then is the one truly watching? Maybe you're not the reader at all. Maybe it's your unconscious doing the reading for you.
You think you're the one observing, but the truth is, something much deeper is doing the observing for you. Your unconscious reads people long before your mind invents reasons to justify it. It watches patterns, posture, tone, not to understand them, but to confirm its own story about the world. That's the trap. Your perception isn't neutral. It's a feedback loop between memory and expectation. You don't see what's there, you see what you're prepared to see. It's why two people can look at the same face, and one sees danger, while the other sees desire. They're not seeing the person. They're seeing their own emotional history projected onto a body. But they're not truth. They're translations. Translations made by a psyche still trying to protect its oldest wounds. Because long before you read others, you were trained to read your environment for safety. The way a parent's silence meant danger. The way attention meant approval. The way love meant performance. Now, those same reflexes guide how you read everyone. You don't just interpret behavior, you reenact your own emotional conditioning. That's why your intuition feels so certain. It's not new information, it's ancient recognition. The mind confuses familiarity with truth, and the unconscious loves that confusion because it keeps your ego safe from the unknown. So your first impressions, they're not first at all. They're echoes. Echoes of everything unresolved within you. That's why awareness feels like betrayal. It exposes how much of your perception isn't yours, how much of your reading is just your history pretending to be insight. You can't read anyone clearly while reading through the fog of your own protection mechanisms. That's the painful part. To realize how much of what you call intuition is actually avoidance wearing intuition's mask. But here's the miracle hidden inside that realization. The unconscious doesn't manipulate you to punish you. It's trying to make you whole. Every projection, every misreading, every emotional misfire is an invitation to remember the moment where that perception began. When you trace a false assumption back to its root, you don't just understand someone else better, you reclaim a part of yourself that had been editing your world in silence. And as you start to see that mechanism in motion, as you watch your mind building meaning out of fear or desire, something incredible happens. You begin to separate seeing from interpreting. You stop believing every emotional signal your psyche sends. You learn to pause before labeling. That pause, that tiny gap between perception and projection, is where real awareness lives. It's the space Jung called the confrontation with the unconscious. Because the unconscious isn't a dark monster, it's an overprotective storyteller. It doesn't want to deceive you, it just wants to keep you consistent with your past. But consistency is not consciousness, it's repetition. And as long as you keep reading others through that repetition, you'll never see the present moment for what it is. You'll only see the past trying to survive inside it. Soon you'll understand that freedom isn't in perfect perception. It's in realizing that every perception is filtered through memory. And once you know that, the unconscious loses its power to manipulate what you see. Because in that moment, you stop being the character inside the story and start becoming the one who's finally reading it. But what happens when you turn that same awareness inward, when you stop reading the world and start reading yourself?
You've spent years studying faces, but never the one that looks back at you in silence. You've chased motives in everyone else, but never asked why you need to know them so badly. That's where the real work begins. Not decoding others, but decoding the hunger to decode. Why do you need to understand everyone? To feel safe? To feel superior? To make sure no one can surprise you again? Behind every obsession with reading others, there's a wound that fears being unread. To turn the gaze inward is to face that wound without disguise. It's not pleasant. It's surgery without anesthesia. But it's the only kind of seeing that heals instead of repeats. Jung said the shadow isn't evil, it's simply what the ego refuses to acknowledge. When you look inward long enough, you start recognizing the same motives you judged in others. This realization doesn't destroy you, it humbles you. Because the more you see yourself clearly, the less need you have to defend the image of being good. You begin to prefer honesty over innocence, and honesty has its own kind of peace. It's the peace that comes from dropping the performance, from watching your emotions rise without immediately assigning blame, from letting a thought finish its sentence before you label it wrong. That's when observation becomes awareness, and awareness becomes compassion. Because the moment you turn the gaze inward, you realize everyone else is fighting the same invisible battle. Every projection you once received was just someone else trying to survive their own reflection. And suddenly, understanding people stops being about prediction, it becomes about presence. You stop analyzing and start witnessing. You stop demanding clarity from others and start offering space for both of you to exist. That's how intimacy is born, not from knowing everything about someone, but from standing in front of the unknown without flinching. You'll notice how your energy changes. You listen differently. You speak slower. You stop trying to win conversations. You start hearing what people actually mean, not just what your pain wants them to mean. That's the quiet freedom Jung pointed to look inward without shame, to face your contradictions without collapsing, to hold both the wound and the wisdom in the same breath. It's not a clean process. Some days you'll feel raw, as if your defenses have been peeled away. But that rawness is proof you're seeing clearly. It means the mask has cracked, and behind it, something alive is finally breathing. And in that rawness, you discover a new kind of strength. Not the strength of certainty, but the strength of presence. Because the gaze that once judged, now is the gaze that forgives. The same awareness that once dissected others, now starts to hold them, and yourself, with gentleness. And that gentleness isn't weakness. It's the first sign that the war between the self and its reflection is finally ending. But there's still one step left, because seeing yourself is not the same as freeing yourself. Awareness alone doesn't dissolve the projection. It just exposes it. So how do you break the pattern entirely? How do you stop the unconscious from painting over your sight again? To find that answer, you'll have to do the hardest thing the ego can imagine. Let go of the need to read at all. There comes a point where awareness stops being comfortable and starts demanding transformation. You've seen the mirror. You've faced the projections. You've realized that most of what you read in others was written by your own past. Because every time you project, you're trying to control reality. You're trying to make life predictable, to turn chaos into narrative, to replace mystery with meaning. True freedom is the collapse of that need. It's the quiet acceptance that you will never fully read anyone, not even yourself. And strangely, that acceptance doesn't make you blind. It makes you clear. Because when you stop forcing meaning, life starts revealing itself on its own. The moment you stop demanding that others make sense, they begin to make presence. And presence is more truthful than any interpretation. This is where projection turns into perception, where the mind no longer uses others as mirrors, it uses them as windows through which the soul breathes. Because when you stop reading people as characters in your story, you start allowing them to exist in theirs.
You free them from your projections and free yourself from theirs. That's the quiet revolution Jung hinted at. To be conscious is to live without the armor of interpretation. And something profound happens there. Relationships become lighter. You stop trying to be the one who gets it. You start becoming the one who feels it. Not every silence hides deceit. Not every smile hides manipulation. Sometimes things just are. And that's enough. This is what Jung meant when he said that consciousness is not a victory, it's a surrender. Because the moment you stop trying to read life, life starts reading you differently. It starts mirroring the freedom you've allowed. The people around you will notice. Your presence will feel different, not invasive, not decoding, just aware. You'll see the same faces as before, but this time you'll meet them with an unclenched mind. That's when you realize you don't need to understand motives to feel connection. You don't need to predict behavior to feel safe. You don't need to read anyone to love them. Because love, in its most conscious form, is the absence of projection. It's the moment you stop using someone as a reflection of your fear and start seeing them as a reflection of possibility. And maybe that's what Jung wanted us to find. A love not based on comprehension, but on awareness. Not a reading of others, but a recognition of ourselves in everything. The freedom beyond projection isn't about detachment. It's about devotion. Devotion to what is real. Devotion to what is here. Devotion to the parts of you that no longer need to perform to feel seen. Because when the mirror no longer defines you, you finally have space to look beyond it. And what you'll find there isn't the end of understanding. It's the beginning of presence. And when presence replaces projection, something unexpected happens. The mirror no longer reflects you. It begins to recognize you.
You don't read people. You remember yourself through them. You came here wanting to read people, to see through masks, to understand hidden motives, but maybe that was never the real goal. Maybe the mirror was never meant to reveal them. It was meant to reveal you. Every reaction, every misreading, every moment of projection was the unconscious whispering, "Look closer. The story isn't out there." And when you finally do, when you stop defending your image and start witnessing your reflection, something extraordinary happens. The mirror begins to read you back. It reflects not your flaws, but your honesty. Not your perfection, but your willingness to see. That's where consciousness begins, in the silent recognition that you were never the observer, but the observed. You were never decoding others. You were decoding the fragments of yourself hidden inside them. And when that truth lands, the illusion shatters quietly. You stop seeking understanding and start becoming understanding itself. You stop trying to read and start learning how to see. Because the secret Jung left us was never about gaining control. It was about surrendering the illusion of it. To stand before the mirror unguarded, to see both the shadow and the light, and to say, without shame, without pride, "This is me, and this is also everyone else." That's when the reflection softens. That's when the world stops being a projection and starts being a presence. The mirror doesn't disappear. It just becomes clear. If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe, not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. You don't need to keep decoding people. Not every silence is a secret. Not every glance hides a meaning. Some things aren't messages, they're mirrors. The work isn't to read others better. It's to stand still when the mirror shows you something you'd rather not see. That's how you stop reacting and start remembering. How you stop analyzing and start awakening. So if this felt quiet, or heavy, or strangely familiar, don't turn away. That feeling is the moment awareness begins.